Hello, everyone. Just a reminder that you are in the session on screen here, and I am of no consequence. I'm just here to introduce Nick and Paul, who are going to answer all of your questions you ever had about VR, solve all your problems, and we'll all profit from there.
Okay. Come in if you're coming, gentlemen. Okay. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm Nick Honeysett. I'm CEO of the Balboa Park Online Collaborative. I work with a whole bunch of cultural institutions down in San Diego. To my right is Paul Burke. He's CEO of Guru, and in a shameless plug, they have a booth up in the conference room, and I highly suggest, we're not going to give you any examples of VR, but I highly encourage you to go up there and you will have the full-on experience. So we're going to talk about VR, and I had this, Paul and I had this kind of, I have this question about VR, and it's basically this. Deja VR, I'm very proud of coming up with this. And so it's kind of, we've been here before, it's another technology, so I just want to start a conversation about this, maybe starting to think differently and quicker about this technology. So unlike what Matt just said, we don't have many answers. We have lots of questions, and I want to throw it out to the wisdom of the crowd. So we're going to kind of crank through, kind of setting this up, and then I'm really interested, or we are really interested to hear what you say, because we are both in this business of providing service. I'm on the non-profit side, Paul is on the for-profit side. So disappointed if you'd like to leave now because you're not going to get any answers. Disappointment. Greatest gift of all, the gift that keeps on giving. So let's review some of the technologies. I don't think anybody in here is older than me, so some of these, possibly exception of Alan, and I'm not going to comment on the gorgeous lady in the front and the black cardigan. But touchscreens, there was a time before touchscreens. Many of us know that, and when touchscreens came in, we tried to figure out how to use them best. The World Wide Web. I remember when that first came in, and it took me a couple of views at it before I realized it was going to change the world. Metadata. Sing it with me. If you like it, put some metadata on. We were talking about this decades ago, and still we haven't done it. Interoperability. We've been talking about this for 2 decades, and most of the institutions I work with in Balboa Park still have not integrated their dams with their collections management system. It drives me nuts. Social media, seems like we accelerated on social media. There are actually real positions dedicated to social media. 5 years ago, it was just somebody's add-on role. And then mobile. So really my question is, can we figure out now, VR is going to be massively important. Can we figure out now what's important about it? I'll just share this. I love this. Mobile phones, just the same as a phone without the wall attached. So this is where we are on virtual reality. We're coming out of the trough of disillusionment. We're into the slope of enlightenment. So it's still somewhat of a wow thing, which is why we've kind of just come out of the trough of disillusionment. So what's happening when we get past that wow factor, when the technology in and of itself isn't important to people? What's that message behind that? It's everywhere. It's in sports, both on the player side and the fan side. It's in retail. It's in education. It's in gaming. PlayerUnknown, million concurrent users on virtual reality gaming platforms. 1 million concurrent users, right? It's massive. It's in healthcare. It's in whatever this is. And then I thought I'd share a quick video with you because there's some cool things going on at the Museum of Tech and Innovation.
So we're here today in Reboot Reality.
This is kind of our competition.
A place where we are showcasing immersive technologies like VR, AR, and mixed reality with our visitors every day. By putting on a headset, you're kind of blinded to the world around you, but it opens the potential for other worlds.
And they're actually putting a whole bunch of haptic stuff in it.
It's are taking advantage of other sensory perceptions as being So not
you won't
only
experience
are you in
this
a
up
VR
in the conference
headset,
hall,
but the wind is blowing in your face, and it creates that greater sense of being there, flying through the sky. Usually,
pretty cool. I'm going to skip that because I really do want to hear from the crowd. All these companies are in it. The top companies in the world are all investing massively in VR. It's going to be huge if you hadn't figured that out right now. So the stakes changed for us in the museum community. This is what it kind of feels like to me. VR is this massive wave that is going to consume us. A whole bunch of things are happening now. We're creating these experiences. You can create some amazing empathy using VR. You can transport people. You can completely enrich their experience. We can create Virtual visits, are we going to get into virtual tickets? I mean, real money, people coming virtually to our institutions and they actually pay for it? I don't know. Virtual exhibitions, archiving exhibitions, so you can actually see when an exhibition is gone, you can actually experience it. We're doing that. Education, conservation, you name it. Development, creating virtual experiences of a capital project and selling it on to bring in dollars. It's kind of everywhere. So can it be different this time? So let's start thinking about it now. Some myths and truths, if you're interested. People don't know what it is. No, it's not true. 73% of Americans say they're knowledgeable about this stuff. It's a fad. No. Billions in sales of headsets. Predicted a $120 billion industry in a couple of years' time. This is really interesting. The big tech giants, even though they're massively investing in this, the prediction is that they are not going to lead it. There are 800 startups on AngelList in this space with an average valuation of almost 5 million. That is massive. That kind of level of industry is driving such a large industry. The top brands are in there developing it. 200 headsets available on Amazon. Search for headset on Amazon. I had never heard of most of them. It's amazing. Keys to success. So this is where we need to start thinking about this. There's a real lesson here. So it's in a lot of these industries: architecture, marketing, healthcare, military, all that kind of stuff. Pokemon Go. At one point had 45 million daily average users. Now they have 5. So something happened with that experience where it isn't as compelling as it's kind of tired, maybe. I don't know. Pokemon users around? Daily users? Okay, look at that. Perfect. 70% of consumers see clear benefits. Mobile will greatly accelerate this technology. We've got to focus on mobile, and that's gonna involve development platforms. There's a whole range of these: Cardboard, Daydream, Samsung, PlayStation, Oculus Rift, HTC. Different development costs, increasing development costs. There's an easy way to do it. There's a tough way to do it. I'll share with you my favorite clip from a movie about the mismatch of technology and expectation of technology. You may be familiar with this.
Perhaps the professor could use your computer. Please.
Computer? Computer? Ah. Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
The keyboard. How quaint.
Let's not be quaint about this technology in the museum space. We were talking about that earlier. So, it's a compelling, unbelievably compelling layer. We can create compelling narratives and stories in it. That's kind of what we do in the museum world. That's our business, creating interpretive narrative. It is going to be ubiquitous. It's going to be part of everyday life. There is going to be an expectation that if we don't do something, it will just happen without us having any input into it. So should we be doing something different this time? I just lay these questions out around budget, people, guidelines, platforms, best practice, technologies, expectations, which is most important. Buy versus build, that's a conversation that's been going on in the museum community for a long time. So, as I said, Paul is a provider of this. I have to be a wise information knowledge person about this to the institutions I support. I don't have the answers to all the questions, and many of the institutions are not asking the right questions, which is a bad place to start. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and your questions about this and how you're thinking about this. But first of all, I'm just gonna kind of give Paul a moment to, because he's deeply embedded this, he's interacting with a whole bunch of museums, and just, if you could just share with us a couple of experience and your thoughts about this, Paul.
Sure. Sorry. I think Nick and I have talked a lot of times. We've had a couple panels about, sort of startups and how startups can affect museums, or museums can learn from startups. And the thing I always talk about, or we've always discussed, is just sort of dip your toe in, learn fast, fail fast, and you don't need to go overboard and go all the way in, worry about sinking the entire ship. We as a company weren't going to get into VR at all. It just sort of it almost happened by chance. And it partly happened because I was in China, and I was actually at a cultural institution there, and my experience was that I was like, this is one of the best places I've ever been to. I want to come back here, but I don't actually want to travel back here. How can I do it? And my chief creative officer had been pushing us to move into VR over and over. It was a natural extension of the augmented reality work we'd been doing. And so I came back and I said, all right, I'm sorry, you're right. This is probably the future, even though I don't like putting the headsets on. This is where things are going. And so we just started playing lightly in it. And so we get asked a lot by museums we work with. Like I'll get a call like, well, how can we do this? How do we dive into VR? So you don't really need to dive into it. And I guess I always tell everyone, like, just don't ever do it for the sake of doing it. Don't ever do anything, I guess, for the sake of doing it. Figure out like what your goals are as an institution, and then how do you leverage whatever a piece of technology is, or whether it's AR, VR, mobile, data, whatever it could be, as a tool. So a couple of good examples is one of the partners we work with. It's an amazing institution, but they have a really, really bad physical location. So they're hard to get to. So they created this really, really awesome VR experience, and it was doing really, really well at their location. And they came up with the plan. They said, well, our goal actually is to get more people here and to spread the word. So they put it on the back of a truck and started driving around the nearest city, because their goal was to actually get more people to come and to spread the word about their institution. So instead of just saying we're going to do VR for the sake of doing VR, we're going to create an experience and leverage this experience to enhance our goal. Another one of our partners said over and over again that for 2 years they've been saying we spend all this money putting on these massive exhibitions that we put our blood, sweat, and tears into, and they go away. And we have members who say they want to see them again, but we don't really have any way of doing it. What if we what if we have a way to archive them? And so we've been working with them to actually archive the experiences, and they're actually finding, it's just sort of in testing phases, but they're actually finding that there might be a new market for members to pay for a new true digital membership, because they can access these things that that are going away, and the curators are finding that there's actually value for them to go back and study these things too. So I guess instead of finding the solution and then trying to find a problem for it, find the problem and then see what the solution that there might be for that is there.
So how many people are really actively experimenting with it or deployed it, and it's in? Okay, so what are your thoughts? Is it just kind of it's another technology? We'll just kind of do what we always do, and in a couple of years' time we will have figured out how we should have been using it. Alan.
So I'm a big fan of what the New York Times is doing with what they call 360 VR.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it has an immediacy to it. They use a wonderful team of photographers. I have a great team of photographers. I just want to see what's possible with that, whether it's an evening event where we may have 1,500 people on all floors of our atrium, making kind of a very interesting experience to share, or whether it's moving through an exhibition. I love what MoMA did last year by putting their complete history of exhibition history up, including photographic documentation, and I could see us doing the same and perhaps experimenting with New York for certain exhibitions.
And
so I want to start at
try some stuff.
Try some stuff that I know we can do. And the question is, will it be interesting and good enough to find a public audience?
So that's coming from, so you're in a senior position of leadership for technology and digital at the National Gallery. So is that coming from you? Is there a discussion going on at the EXO level about this kind of stuff? Or
I think Lynn is here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Lynn can talk about kind of a parallel track
Mhm.
that is next stage of this. But
so
I'm interested right here, right now, just starting to work with what the Times is doing. So I think it's very compelling.
no, I mean it completely complements that whole kind of news.
4 or 5 minute
Mhm.
video that looks around everywhere
Mhm.
you are.
So Lynn, hold that thought. Anyone else who's kind of in Alan's spot who's has maybe a slightly different perspective? Doug.
We purchased an Oculus Rift and bought a $5,000 camera. And Henry Block,
Excuse me, can you speak up a little?
yeah,
Thanks.
Henry Block, who does H&R Block, he gave the Nelson Atkins 30 Impressionist paintings a couple years ago. We built out a gallery and put his paintings up there, but photographed them in his house with the 360 camera. And we have on certain fundraising occasions when there are high-level donors, we will bring out the cart with the Rift and let people put on and be in Henry's house and see those Impressionist paintings in the rooms that they're in. And we found it to be an effective way to transport people to where they were in his location. We also were taking, I can't remember the museum in New York City that did the beads last year, but they were little small beads and they,
Cloisters.
yeah, cloisters.
And I'm actually going to talk about it.
Okay, so
Shameless plug for the next session.
we,
Don't go anywhere.
we've got a little work of art that's ivory, and it's little tiny figures called fallen angels, and we've gotten the okay from the conservation staff to get a CAT scan, and we're going to allow people to put on the helmet and be inside that. So we are experimenting, just trying to see where we think it might stick, where it can add an experience.
Okay, so that's the kind of, you're at the wow, kind of wow, this technology, people coming, it's like wow. And so that's what my point is. We've done this so many times, it's like, okay, what should we be thinking about? So we can all do this kind of wow thing, get the donors in, we get money, and then what? Matt, you had your hand up.
Well, I think I was just going to offer a perspective because anything I say that's practical will spoil my session on Friday.
We don't care about that. So please share some insight.
No, I'm really interested in the long term. Like to me, like as we get closer and closer to the Star Trek room, what's it called, the holodeck, which is we're headed that way, right? Then I think it actually begs the question of what is the function of a museum now? What was the original function of a museum? Because a museum was a response to some sort of cultural gap, some need. Somebody had something, so other people needed something, and said, hey, well, let's put a building up, we'll put these objects in the building, we'll invite the public in. I think this is that. It is, like you said, as you'll see in my slides, but like it is just another technology. However, eventually it's going to cause us to wonder, what are we doing and why are we doing it? Because we will be able to recreate our buildings infinitely en masse in multiple configurations, and then it's like the question is like, how can we respond to that original impetus using this technology? Does that make sense? I mean, back to the beginning, back to the first principle.
Because if you look at like the web, I think of the VR as the same as the web. The web has changed the world, and it's going to change what we do because it provides this interpretive layer.
Well, I think to that point though, you still have the control of that interpretive layer, right? I think people still go to, you can create as many of those buildings as you want, and that's like my point when I came back from China. I said I want to go back here, I want to go back there, and 100 people could recreate it to their own liking, but I want to hear these experts tell me their story, and I want to walk around, even if it's in my own living room. I want to be able to walk around and hear these stories. I think that's sort of the magic actually comes down to the storytelling, at least for me. I think that's going to be the difference long term.
Because I think we all know technology changes quicker and quicker and quicker, and we've really got to get ahead of the curve on this one.
Yes.
And then,
I guess what I want to see is that developers understand that it's a different medium.
Mhm.
It's not just about making people go wow and then
Right.
they get bored. Just
That's-
transporting them.
right. That's the whole point. How do we get past that
Even
wow?
our museum right now is working at a virtual museum, which I'm like, why are we doing this? We're reducing our real museum. I'm not sure that that's adding anything to an experience. So it's just thinking about the possibilities of positional sound, for example, which are incredibly good for immersion. Of course, being able to look everywhere, to have room scale experiences as well. So understanding and making people that fund the projects to understand that it's important to have the expensive hardware. I mean, cardboard are great to understand how it works, but the real experience, the immersive experience requires investment.
Right, but pretty soon, I mean, what we know about technology, smaller, cheaper, faster, it's going to be glasses at some point. So, Lynn, can I bring you in now? So can you tell us who you are and your role, and then give us that perspective?
I'm Russell, and I'm head of education at the National Gallery, and I know education works differently at all institutions. Some people tend to either prefer or add the term engagement, and I think personally the best education is always engaging, and I do feel that VR will really help mightily in what we try to provide, I think, for our audiences, because to a large extent, our intention, I think, has always been to immerse the audience in the kind of learning that works best for them. It seems to me that VR is especially great for people who invest best in an immersive learning environment so that you can help create empathy, you can help create a memorable experience, so that, as you found in your visit to the museum in China, it's something that never leaves you, and you want to keep somehow replaying it. I mean, think of an exhibition, for example, for which the only objects that are available may be political buttons and recorded talks. And through really great VR, especially through the HoloLens now, which I find the most effective and probably for art and history museums, you could help create an event from the past in using the HoloLens that just builds out from the exhibition experience into something that begins to imitate the I was there feeling. And that's really what happens, I think, when you get beyond the wow factor. The wow factor is fine, but come on, what do we learn from that? What you need to follow it with is a learning experience that is wow.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd like to do at the National Gallery, but I think what we all need to do is to talk to our audiences first and find out who has the experience, what sort of things are they looking for, and then do trials of what works for the audience. That's what I'd like to see in the National Gallery.
Sorry, let me get Paul comment on.
Yeah, you said that the magical word to me was empathy. The most incredible experiences I've had in VR have been ones where I literally feel like I'm walking in somebody else's shoes. I think that's it. Forget the wow experiences. Like that is cool. I think if you point over there, like that's cool for 30 seconds or so, and then I'm done. But there's been experiences where I've felt so uncomfortable where I was actually sitting in on someone else's conversation that I wanted to get out of the room, but I actually couldn't leave because it was making such an impact on me. But then another one where I was actually walking in someone else's shoes, and that was amazing. And I think though, especially in museums and cultural institutions where there are all these learning experiences, and you're instead of just telling, something that we always try to do, instead of just telling a story, we try to make the visitor the protagonist. We try to let them be part of the story themselves. And I think that's much more powerful.
So I want to pose a question and see if anybody is actively doing this or has answers. So the way this stuff works in museums is kind of bottom up. So social media is my example, where somebody just did social media in museums, and then after about 6 months or a year, something happens, gets to the level of the senior team, and then suddenly it becomes more important, and there's focus and there's resources, and then the person who's been doing it, whose job it wasn't theirs to do, now has a formal title of social media coordinator. And that's my problem with this, is how do we get past that? And is anybody having a strategic conversation in their institution at a high level saying, this thing is important, it's going to be totally ubiquitous, what are we going to do about it? Shane.
We have
we just kind of dabbled a little bit at Crystal Bridges in VR, but we realized that it's something that that is it's going to be very important, and we also realized that we don't really know what we want to do with it. So rather than finding the project to apply it to, next year I was able to get some money to just play with it. So we'll go do some 3D scanning, buy some headsets, develop a couple of small things just to kind of play with it. There's no launch dates, no projects, just
Experiment
with it so we can kind of start building a strategy.
Okay. Alison.
Yeah. I'm at the 9/11 Museum in New York, and we are having strategic conversations about it, knowing that if we kind of don't start thinking about it, we will be left behind by the shinier, faster cars. But the conversation strategically we're having about it is how do you keep authenticity in a medium that requires something like a computer-generated image or kind of a virtual environment when the core of our institutional narrative is to make sure people aren't conspiracy theorists and aren't kind of assigning this kind of false sense of like you're making this up. So I think we want to get on board. I think we still aren't quite sure how to just treat it like a storytelling component instead of a legitimate historical artifact.
Right. Who else? Yes, you've had
I'm at SF moment in San Francisco, which is where like most of the tech companies that are driving this change are located, their neighbors. So we can't.
So you have all the answers.
They don't have the answers. Turns out I've met with most of them. But,
Oh, they don't either. They're just trying to.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that don't. There's a lot of I don't want to be left behind, both from us but also from the tech companies, and that allows actually us to have a role in how that's defined because they're still defining it themselves. So we've run the experiments and proved success. So we're kind of past the experimental phase and into the practical doing phase. So like later this month, I'm meeting with members of the board and all senior leadership on like the sort of divergent ways that we could approach VR and augmented reality, kind of consider them on a spectrum. But what's become really interesting is by doing experiments and getting visibility from those experiments, I'm now getting invited to things that are put on by the industry to offer like a museum perspective. So I've joined this ridiculously titled Leadership Council for the Immersive Arts.
Ooh. And he just joined the MCN board as well, so tap him for everything.
So in the museum sector, that would be called like the Coordinating Organizing Committee for Investigating Things in the Future Possibly Funding. That is like stupid tough. What it means is I'm in a room with 25 people who are paying like $1 million plus, like the people from Vice, the people from Fox, the people from Paramount. And in that forum, they're really worried about first use VR fails. And so they're very hesitant to invest in non-quality, non-destination experiences. And so they're actually looking for museums, and this is why I got invited, because we're doing VR as performance. So it's like a 15-minute performance and like 7 minutes in the middle of VR, but all of this was brought out in real life with humans and theatre and sets and colours and backdrops, and then you're in VR, it's connected, and you come out and there's like rituals and objects, and so very much in the kind of Sleep No More vein, but with VR in the middle. And so they're saying to us, we want you to be putting on, Alejandro, the Carnegie Arena, which is a bathroom at the moment. We want more of that because it's delivered at, it's acting as a barrier to this fear that this is all smoke and mirrors. So that actually, like, we don't know it yet, but the media sector are looking for us for opportunities. I think there's going to be really big partnership opportunities in the next couple of years because we've put on incredibly expensive, high-quality stuff in our venues because we provide the right experience model. So if you're interested in that, I'll plug my own session that's tomorrow.
This is just a shameless plugging session for everyone else's session. So everybody give their business card to Keir, and he'll set you up with large industry. We got time for one more question. So who has something desperate they want to share? Okay, better be good.
Well, it's not desperate, but I am desperate for the answers. If anyone has the reply, please come to me. So how do we archive this content for the long term, and not just the source code, but also the hardware? I know we talk about this being hosted on apps and websites, but we know they're all, vulnerable to obsolescence. And yeah, I just wanted to see if anyone's already studying this and should we also like regulate this hardware? Like what questions should we be also asking about how to save this content long term?
Right.
Antitrust in the University of Illinois. Antitrust in the University of Illinois.
Oh,
And the Atlantic, the American.
So this was a very short session, but stick around for Kerry. If you want to send Paul or I anything, come see us up in the booth. But if you have insight or questions, love to hear from you. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to hand over. Are you?